Miss Anderson here. Today we're going to jump into 12.4 to continue our work on polygons. So in our last lesson, we learned what polygons are. We learned that they are closed plane shapes made up of line segments, and we even learned how to name them. So we learned a lot of new vocabulary. Today we're just going to build on what we learned by looking at the sides of polygons. So we're going to learn 3 important vocabulary words today, and those have to do with how those sides relate to one another. So our big idea for today is that another way we can talk about polygons is by talking about how their sides relate to one another. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. Now, this is a quadrilateral. It's a 4-sided polygon, but its sides have different relationships that I can talk about. So for example, if I look at these 2 lines, the lines at the top and the bottom, if I took those lines out of the shape, they might look something like this. They run next to each other almost like an equal sign, and they don't look like they would touch if they kept going. They would go on forever and ever and ever in that direction if I let them, if they weren't line segments but lines, and they would never touch. But then if I look at these 2 sides right here, I would see that if I kept them going, they would touch eventually. They would look something like that if I let these 2 kind of orange lines keep going. They would cross somewhere up here. So those are going to have another special name. And finally, if we look at this section, it looks like a perfect corner, right? That perfect square-shaped corner. That also has another name when lines cross at a special right angle. All right? So we're going to learn the name of these 3 lines today and use them to help us describe some shapes. Let's dive in. So when you have 2 shapes that cross, but they don't cross at a right angle, they cross kind of at a skewed, acute, and obtuse angles. Those are called intersecting lines. And they're called that because they intersect. Intersect means just to cross. So these are lines that cross or meet, and when they do that, they form angles in between them. Next, we have perpendicular lines. Now, perpendicular lines are lines that cross or meet at a right angle. So they look like a plus sign or a T. They meet and they make that nice square corner. Finally, we have parallel lines. Now, parallel lines kind of look like an equal sign. They're lines that never cross and they never meet. And they're the same distance apart. So if I look at how far apart they are over here, that's how far apart they are over here and over here. Now, these lines don't have to be the same length. I could have one that's shorter than the other, but the important thing is that they're the same distance apart, that they never touch. So take a moment. I do this with my kiddos every year. Take a moment and with your arms, make parallel lines. So maybe you could do this. Maybe you could do this. My kids last year really liked to do this and dab on those parallel lines. To make perpendicular lines, we would make a nice T or a plus sign. And to make intersecting lines, you can kind of cross however you want. You just don't want that nice square perpendicular corner. All right? So we have intersecting, we have perpendicular, and we have parallel. Those are our 3 big terms for today. So let's look at how we can use them to describe some plane shapes. So first, let's look at this shape. They want us to tell them which pairs of sides, which sides are parallel. So remember, parallel means that they look like an equal sign, they never touch. So here I have side A, side B, side C, and side D. You can go ahead and draw this on your own piece of paper or open to your book if you want to follow along. So if I look, what side would be parallel to side A? Well, side A goes this way. So what else goes that way? Side C, right? And it's perfectly straight, just like A. It wouldn't meet A if I kept these lines going on and on and on and on. These 2 lines would never touch. So I could say which sides are parallel? Well, sides A and C are parallel. Are there any other parallel sides? In this shape, there are. We also have side B and side D. And if I kept those sides going on and on forever, they would also never touch. So another pair of parallel lines or parallel sides are B and D. All right, so these are the kinds of problems you're going to see today. They're going to give you a shape and they're going to highlight or emphasize or talk about some of these lines. So let's look at the instructions. It says describe the colored sides as either intersecting, perpendicular, or parallel. So remember, intersecting means they cross, they intersect. Perpendicular is that really nice plus sign or corner. And parallel means just like these two L's we see in them, two lines that will not touch but run right next to each other, the same distance apart. So these are the colored lines in our first shape. This is a parallelogram. It's called that because it has lots of parallel sides. So look at these two sides. If I kept them running, would they ever touch? They wouldn't, right? They would run right alongside each other at that angle, and they would keep going and never touch. So these two colored lines are parallel lines. All right, next let's look at this triangle. So they highlighted this line and this line. They share an endpoint, which tells me that they do intersect. So the question now is, do they make a nice 90-degree right angle, or do they cross at a cute and obtuse angles? So does that corner look like a right angle to you? It doesn't, right? That right angle, remember, is like an L. It's that nice square rectangular corner. This here is an acute angle. That's an angle that's less than a right angle. So that means that these are intersecting lines, not perpendicular. All right, and last but not least, we're going to look at these two lines here. So you can see that these two lines meet at that nice square corner. Now remember, that corner is called a right angle, and if I kept these lines going forever, they would make some more nice right angles, right? So if it makes right angles, it isn't called intersecting, it's called perpendicular. So these would make perpendicular lines. So when I describe these lines, I could say that this polygon has a set of parallel lines, this polygon has a set of intersecting lines, and this polygon has a set of perpendicular lines. All right, Gators, that wraps it up for today. Don't forget to look at this vocabulary and practice it on your Nearpods and with your vocabulary builders. Texas says hi. Bye, Gators.